the first thing I noticed when I opened the doors was the silence. Not the kind of peaceful silence that feels like calm after a storm, but the sharp, hollow kind that screams at you, something is missing. My heart was racing as I stepped into the restaurant I had spent my entire life building, every brick, every wall, every meticulously polished surface a testament to my sacrifice. I had dreamed of this moment for decades, imagining the smiles of my family, the pride in their eyes, the applause as I finally revealed my creation. But the chairs sat empty. The tables gleamed under the soft lights, yet there was no laughter, no footsteps, no familiar voices. Just the sound of my own breath. Echoing back at me, I had sacrificed more than anyone could imagine. Years of skipped vacations, missed birthdays, nights spent crying into the sink while kneading dough or testing sauces until my fingers burned. I had poured every ounce of energy I had into this restaurant, and I had imagined that, finally, my family would see it, would finally acknowledge me, would finally understand the person I had become. And now, standing here alone, it hit me like a punch to the gut. They didn't come. Not one of them. My parents, my siblings, even my cousins who had been like my second family, nothing. Just silence and empty seats staring back at me like accusing eyes. I remember my phone buzzing first, a message from my mother, "Sorry. Can't make it. Maybe next time." I stared at it, my hands trembling. My father's text came a minute later, almost identical, polished and impersonal, "Congrats, but I can't be there." My siblings? They hadn't even bothered. I had spent weeks sending them reminders, teasing them about the grand opening, sharing pictures of the final touches, hoping that something, anything, would pull them here. And yet, they didn't even try. The realization settled over me like a dark, suffocating cloud. They didn't care about this moment. They didn't care about me. As the minutes dragged by, I walked through the restaurant, touching the walls as if their texture could absorb my despair. The kitchen, my sacred space, gleamed in stainless steel perfection. Every stove, every knife, every cutting board was in its place, waiting to dance to the rhythm I had rehearsed 1,000 times in my head. I could almost hear the imagined chorus of compliments, the teasing remarks from my brother about my obsessive attention to detail, the proud smiles of my parents. But reality kept crashing back, sharp and cold. No one was here. My dream, my masterpiece, felt like a ghost. Then, as if the universe had decided to mock me further, the first real customer arrived. A stranger. A couple, laughing as they stepped inside, oblivious to the emotional storm brewing around me. I plastered a smile on my face, shaking hands and welcoming them, all the while feeling like a fraud. This was supposed to be my moment, my family seeing the life I had built, and instead, I was performing for strangers while my own blood abandoned me. Hours passed, and the restaurant filled slowly, strangers admiring the decor, tasting the dishes I had perfected over years of trial and error. I served each table, my smile never faltering, but my eyes were dry with unshed tears. Every laugh I heard felt like a blade slicing into my chest because it reminded me what I was missing. The grand opening, the moment I had imagined since childhood, was happening without the people I had hoped would be my biggest fans. I started questioning everything. Had I really done all this for them, or had I been building a monument to a dream that existed only in my heart? By evening, the restaurant was buzzing with life, and I found myself alone in the kitchen, watching the sunset filter through the windows. And that's when I saw it, a small note tucked under the vase of fresh flowers on the corner table. I picked it up with shaking hands, expecting perhaps a belated apology, a half-hearted excuse. Anything. But the note wasn't from them. It was from my assistant, someone I barely thought would understand the depth of my heartbreak. It read, "You've done something extraordinary. They don't deserve to see it. I do." And in that moment, a strange, dangerous feeling settled over me. The initial sting of betrayal began to twist into something hotter, more combustible. The people I loved, the people I sacrificed for, had abandoned me. And I wasn't sure if I wanted forgiveness or revenge, and just as I was staring at that note, trying to digest the meaning, the restaurant door slammed open. A shadow fell across the polished floors, and I froze, heart hammering in my chest. It wasn't a customer. It was someone I never expected, someone who had been absent from my life for far too long, and the expression on their face told me that what they were about to say would change everything. I couldn't move. The shadow at the door lingered, tall and unmistakable. It was my older brother, the one who had always been the golden child in the family, the one who seemed to glide through life while I struggled for every crumb of recognition. His eyes scanned the restaurant like a predator surveying unfamiliar territory, and when they landed on me, I felt a mixture of relief, anger, and disbelief all at once. "I didn't think you'd actually do it," he said, voice low, almost trembling. There was no warmth, no joy in his tone, only a strange curiosity, like he had stumbled into someone else's world and didn't know whether he was allowed to stay. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw all the years of hurt and longing at him, but I didn't. Instead, I asked quietly, my voice almost a whisper, "Why are you here?" He hesitated, and in that moment, I realized I had expected this. My family, when they finally appeared, would be too late, and it would come wrapped in half-hearted excuses. I wanted to see it for myself," he said, avoiding my gaze. I felt my stomach twist. Not because he had come, but because I realized that after all these years, this was exactly what I had feared. They didn't care about my struggle. They just cared about appearances, about showing up when it suited them, about pretending that they were part of my story. I turned away, walking toward the kitchen, trying to hide the trembling in my hands. I couldn't let him see how much it hurt that he was finally here, but only now, when the moment wasn't mine anymore. I could hear him following me, his footsteps heavy, deliberate, as if trying to make up for lost time with presence alone. "I heard about the opening," he said. "I thought maybe I could. I don't know. Help." I froze mid-step, knife in hand. My chest tightening. Help? After years of ignoring my calls, dismissing my dreams, mocking my choices, he wanted to help? My anger flared like a wildfire. Help? I spat the word out. "You didn't even care enough to show up when it mattered. You don't get to swoop in now." He sighed, and I could hear the weight of something heavy in his voice, something I didn't recognize. "I know I've been distant," he admitted. "But I had my reasons. I wanted to laugh, to shout, to scream. I had spent my life carrying the weight of this dream, struggling through nights I thought I couldn't survive, and his reasons were finally supposed to justify all the absence, all the hurt, all the silent betrayals." "Reasons?" I asked, voice trembling. "Do you know what it felt like to wait for the people you love, only to see empty seats? Do you know how that shapes a person?" Before he could answer, the kitchen door swung open again, and my heart dropped. My parents walked in, hand in hand, expressions carefully neutral, like actors stepping onto a stage. My mother's eyes flicked to the tables, then to me, and for a split second, I saw a flicker of something: guilt? Fear? Pride? But it vanished almost instantly. "We're here now," my father said smoothly, voice too calm to be real. "Congratulations." I wanted to laugh, wanted to scream, wanted to collapse on the floor. All these years, I had imagined this day as a moment of recognition, of love, of family celebration, and now it felt like a cruel joke. But the worst part wasn't even their absence. It was the revelation that came a few moments later, whispered from a corner of the room where I hadn't noticed. My assistant, the one who had written the note, leaned close, eyes wide. "You need to see this," they said, pressing a small envelope into my hand. Inside were photographs, images of my family that I hadn't seen in years, my parents, my siblings, laughing, celebrating, not at the restaurant, not with me, but at a lavish party, a private gathering that had happened the exact same night as my grand opening. My chest tightened, and my hands shook as the world around me seemed to tilt. They hadn't been busy. They hadn't been tied up. They had chosen someone else. I felt something inside me break, a cold, sharp fracture that spread through my chest like ice. Every dream, every sacrifice, every sleepless night flashed before my eyes, and the bitter truth settled over me. I had been invisible to the people I loved the most. I had been chasing a dream in hopes that it would earn their love, and now I realized the terrifying truth: they didn't love me. They had never loved me. And in that moment, I made a decision, a dangerous, reckless decision. If they wanted to betray me, if they wanted to ignore me, then I wouldn't just stand there quietly. I would make them see what they had lost. But before I could even act, the restaurant door slammed open again, this time with a force that rattled the windows. And standing there was someone I never expected, a former business rival, someone I had defeated years ago, someone who had always wanted to see me fail. And the look in their eyes told me one thing: tonight, my world was about to get a lot more complicated, and what I had thought was betrayal by blood would soon be dwarfed by a far more dangerous kind. The moment our eyes met, I knew this wasn't a social visit. The rival, the one I had humiliated years ago with nothing but determination and late nights, smiled in that way, the kind that promised chaos. "I heard about your grand opening," they said, stepping inside as if they owned the place. "Congratulations on doing it all alone." The words cut deeper than any insult could. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to stay composed. Every instinct screamed at me to throw them out, to slam the doors shut and pretend they didn't exist. But something darker, more calculated, was rising inside me. If my family had abandoned me, if they had chosen the world over me, maybe it was time to play the game on my terms. I could feel the restaurant's energy shifting. The laughter of customers now sounded like echoes from another life, far removed from the storm brewing in the center of the room. My brother moved closer, tension in every line of his body. My parents stayed near the entrance, expressions frozen, but their eyes betrayed fear that I had always been too polite to show before. I realized, suddenly, that I had a power they didn't anticipate. I had built something real, something permanent, something they could never take away from me. And yet, in that moment, I wasn't thinking about pride. I was thinking about how deep the betrayal ran and how much it hurt. The rival's smirk widened. "I see you've done well," they said, gesturing to the restaurant. "But we both know who deserves the credit for your failures, don't we?" My heart lurched as the realization hit me. They knew about my family. They had followed my life, watched my dreams, and were now here to exploit the exact wounds my parents had inflicted. "What do you want?" I demanded, voice low and trembling. Their eyes glittered like a predator's. "I want to make sure tonight isn't just your grand opening. I want to make sure your family truly regrets leaving you behind." I felt a rush of heat, a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. This was dangerous, yes, but it was also irresistible. For years, I had imagined standing up to my family, confronting them for the way they had ignored me, belittled my ambitions, and chosen appearances over love. And now, here it was, handed to me in a way I hadn't anticipated. But before I could plan my next move, my brother suddenly stepped forward, anger flashing in his eyes. "Don't even think about dragging my parents into this," he said sharply. "This isn't your vendetta to fight." I froze, realizing that my blood wasn't just a source of betrayal, it was also a cage. My own brother, the one I had once trusted, now seemed aligned against me, or at least against the dark path I was considering. And then it happened, the twist I hadn't seen coming. A loud crash echoed from the back of the restaurant. The chandelier, hanging above the main dining area, shuddered, and a piece of glass fell near a table, narrowly missing a customer. Panic erupted instantly. Guests screamed, staff rushed to control the chaos, and in that moment, I saw it. Someone had sabotaged my restaurant. My heart stopped. My assistant's eyes met mine, wide with horror. "It's them," they whispered. "Your family. They didn't just abandon you. They've been working with him." The room spun. My parents, my brother, my entire family, every absence, every slight, every missed birthday, it was all part of a plan to undermine me. I felt bile rise in my throat. The betrayal I had thought ended when they didn't show up for my grand opening had only just begun. Years of neglect, years of pretending they cared, now twisted into a web of conspiracy against me. And the rival? They weren't here for revenge alone. They were here as a catalyst, the one who would ignite the fire my family had built silently over decades. My mind raced, trying to piece together how they could betray me so completely. The photographs, the party, the absences, it all clicked together like a dark puzzle. And in that instant, I realized the final, horrifying truth. They weren't just indifferent, they were threatened by me. Before I could react, my father stepped forward, smooth and cold. "We came because we had to," he said, voice deceptively calm. "We knew this day would happen, and we needed to make sure you understood your place." My chest tightened. Every memory of my childhood, the dismissals, the criticism, the comparisons to my perfect brother, suddenly made sense. They had never wanted me to succeed. And now, here I was, standing amidst my dream, my blood, and a rival who thrived on chaos, realizing that the people I loved most were also my most dangerous enemies. My hands shook, my mind raced, and I knew one thing with absolute certainty: nothing would ever be the same again. And just as I opened my mouth to confront them, the lights flickered and went out. Darkness swallowed the restaurant. Screams erupted. The sound of shattering glass, footsteps running, doors slamming, and in the middle of it all, my rival's chilling laughter filled the air. I was trapped, surrounded by the people who had betrayed me and the one who had come to exploit it, and I realized with a sickening twist, tonight, my dream might not survive. Panic surged through me as I fumbled in the darkness, heart pounding so loudly it felt like it would burst from my chest. Glass crunched beneath my shoes, and I could hear my assistant calling my name, their voice tight with fear. The familiar warmth of the restaurant had vanished, replaced by a cold, chaotic nightmare. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I couldn't leave. Not now. I had spent my entire life building this place, and even in darkness and chaos, I refused to let them destroy it, or me. Suddenly, a small beam of light cut through the black. My rival's figure appeared, leaning against a table, smirking as though the chaos they had caused was the grand opening they had been waiting for. "You thought they were the enemy?" they sneered. "Look around. They've only been the beginning. You've built something amazing, yes, but the real test is surviving those you love." My hands shook as I processed their words. I realized then that the betrayal wasn't just personal, it was systemic. My family's absence, their secret plotting, every slight over the years had been part of a deeper pattern, one meant to break me. But I refused to break. I couldn't. I took a deep breath, letting the fear sharpen into focus. I moved quickly, guiding my assistant to help secure the guests, ensuring nobody was hurt. Then, with a sudden surge of clarity, I confronted my family. "All this time," I shouted over the clamor, "you pretended to love me. You abandoned me. You tried to ruin my dream. And now you stand here, in the chaos you helped create, thinking you have control. But you don't. Not anymore." My father's face hardened, my mother's eyes flickered with guilt that they tried and failed to mask, and my brother froze, suddenly realizing he had misjudged me. It was then that my rival, seeing the confrontation, stepped back, surprised by the fire I had ignited. "Interesting," they muttered. "You're stronger than I thought." That gave me an idea, one fueled by years of pent-up anger and betrayal. I decided, right then, that I wouldn't just survive this night, I would turn it into a lesson. I called the security system, triggered the backup lights, and calmly guided my family to the center of the restaurant. "Look at this," I said, voice steady, as the chaos subsided and the guests returned to murmuring curiosity. "This is my life. Every moment, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, it's all mine. And you weren't part of it. But now, you see it. You've seen what it means to be absent, to betray, to leave someone behind when it matters most." My parents stared at me, speechless. My brother's face paled, realizing that all the assumptions he had made about my dependence on their approval were shattered. And my rival, seeing that their plan to exploit our fracture had failed, froze, realizing the tide had turned. I felt a surge of vindication, a mix of sorrow and triumph. I wasn't vindictive, not exactly. I was simply claiming the life and dream that was always mine. And for the first time, I understood something crucial. The people who abandon you don't get the power to define your success. Only you do. Hours later, when the restaurant was finally calm, I stood alone in the kitchen, staring at the sunset filtering through the windows. My assistant joined me quietly, handing me a glass of water, and I allowed myself a small smile. The night had been a storm of betrayal, chaos, and revelation, but it had also been transformative. I realized that family, blood or otherwise, wasn't about proximity or appearances, it was about respect, loyalty, and recognition. And if they couldn't provide that, I didn't need them to validate me. I had my dream. I had built something that would outlast their absence, outlast their jealousy, and even outlast their betrayal, and just as I exhaled, letting the adrenaline ebb, I noticed a small envelope on the counter. Heart racing, I opened it, expecting another insult or a threat. But inside was a single note, written in delicate, familiar handwriting: "We were wrong. You've earned this. We see you now." My hands trembled as I realized it was from my youngest sister. The one who had quietly supported me from afar, the one who had never doubted my talent, even when the rest of the family had. Tears welled up in my eyes, not for the validation I had longed for, but for the understanding that even in betrayal, there were threads of love, subtle but unbreakable.